All right, guys, so we're going to do some sculpting in this one, but we're going to start with what we see on the screen here real quick. There's a guy that's working on a client project, and he has to create a plant. It has a bunch of dry, dead leaves on it, and he's already sculpted out using voxels, a bunch of leaves, and unfortunately, he has to go back and retopo them now. He was curious if there's faster ways of doing that. So I was trying to explain to him real quick, this is, you can just run it through quad remesher. That's fast, right? It's very easy. You could try decimating it. It might work out for you. Who knows? If you're going straight to game engine or something like that, and it might be something you end up doing, perhaps. But it probably delivers poorer results in general. You try a shrink wrap method, which is all of this next row. Shrink wrap method, usually you build a geometry around it that's cubic. You subdivide it evenly, something like this. You shrink wrap it once to the other. Oh, so you shrink wrap it. You take that shrink wrap, you apply it, you expand it back out. You can hit Control V, smooth the vertices a little bit, and then you shrink wrap it again, but you use a projection shrink wrap where you set negative on the modifier and set its projection in the negative, and you'll get something like this. So that's like kind of a cool automated way of doing things, or very easy way of remeshing something, I guess. But there's even a better one here, which I have quadrify, but it's actually quadriflow. Blender has a built-in quad remesher, right? I had already did that and replaced that by accident, but so that'll turn into that basically. And so this is how that works. I just want to go over it real quick. And it actually works really well in this kind of stuff for some reason. In the object data properties, so it's this little one here. Use quads, remesh, and now you can adjust settings. Turn symmetry off maybe and lower the count here or increase it, up to you. Remesh. See? So that'll subdivide, boom. Like just like that, right? Surprisingly, it doesn't usually work well, but on this case basis, it's not too bad. Now, but that brings me to the next point here. The main thing is that I don't think a lot of guys realize they can use sculpting tools to do like heavy deformation on very simple geometry a lot of times and get kind of the results they want. So if you're trying to create like a leaf and you need to do folds and wrap things up underneath and do all kinds of fun stuff like this, you can do that, and you can do it off geometry like this to get started with. Now, it might take you some time to get used to working this way, but overall, it's not too bad. So if I just create a plane real quick, I'm gonna pull it out over here. The base geometry is simple. You do like a loop cut, maybe another loop cut, and then you can do some extrusions as well if you want. And you're just trying to create squares. Okay, that's like the main thing here. You want to create like squared up little pieces, create the shape of the leaf that you need. So it might be a little bit more involved if you're doing something like a maple leaf or something like that. But for the most part, it's going to be along these lines anyways. And you'll probably just pull the sections apart and try to evenly balance it and space it. So one of the things about sculpting that I don't think a lot of guys fully understand, you can see like we can do that, is that sculpting, before you had crazy remeshers and used all that fun stuff and quad remeshing and everything else, a lot of times guys would sculpt on straight subdivision method. That's so you can use a multi-resolution modifier, and usually it works out very well. So you model a leaf as simple as you can, low poly, right? And then you can take that and you can go and you can use a multi-resolution modifier on it. So if I go into sculpt mode, Control Tab, sculpt mode, hit Control 1 through 5, we'll actually use a multi-res. We go back to object mode and we hit Control 1 through 5, it changes the preview count now. It used to add a subdivision, but it now doesn't do that now, apparently. So anyways, we got that out of the way. We can just subdivide this thing up to what we need it to be. And then now we got something to sculpt on here. But the problem you're going to run into is trying to get all these shapes right and these folds going and everything else. And so you're going to use a large amount of the tools, potentially. But there's a few little tweaks to some of these tools that can help you out quite a bit. So I'm going to set this up here so I can reset brushes when I get into them. But you're going to use a lot of your tools. So you could use any of the sculpting tools like you normally would, like clay strips, crease sharp. You can do draw sharp, inflate. All of this is useful, right? And the scraper, the smooth tool, the trim tool, all of this can be applicable in this case. What we're going to start with is just the regular crease tool. And so on the top here, depending on the leaf you're working on, I guess, you might have different ways you need to do this, but we're going to go with like generic kind of leaf shape stuff, right? If my reference image would stay up, that would be great. Yeah, I got a couple of reference images here. Now, so you could do like draw sharp and do this number, right? Something like that, perhaps. And then you can take like the the grab tool, maybe. In the grab tool, you can just set the size and you can pull it apart a little bit. Do something like that. So crease sharp and draw sharp are very useful in this case, right? You can actually set it to automatically, like normally it's negative. You can hit set it to positive or vice versa. And you can do these little designs like this if you wanted to. But one of the big issues you run into is that, like, first, it needs to fade correctly and it might need to get smaller. So you can adjust your brush accordingly with pin pressure sensitivity if you're using a graphics tab. So it fades out a little bit nicer. You can do all kinds of fun stuff like this. But this isn't the hard part, right? Like this is the easy part of doing something like this. Um, we can go through, do this all day. Okay. But we might need to use like inflate or draw and low strength even. We might need to do big deformations like this. That's fine. But eventually we're going to find that we have to do folds, right? So that could be a thing that happens, right? And how do you fold these edges up? It's rather challenging sometimes for guys. So Snake Hook is actually a pretty good tool for this, believe it or not. And it behaves something almost like the twist tool, which we'll get into here in a second. But what Snake Hook will do, change it back to, let me reset, is it kind of just bends things and twists them at the same time. Like it does this like little number like this. So like you can almost create a fold with this off the bat. The only problem with that, like you see it does actually, right? But it doesn't quite do it as predictably as you might want it to. Like it might need to have like a very big bend fold that goes underneath, but that's not going to cut it because it's now deforming the whole shape up here and it's too curvy, something like that. Use the mask tool, guys. You can turn mask tool on and or turn it on. I got to set it back to the regular settings. Projected goes all the way through a mesh. If there's two sides, that's what it does. But let's say we use the mask tool here. We can limit the effect of that, right? Like we can come in here, do this. And if we use Snake Hook now, this mask, we want to invert it. So we press A, we invert, use Snake Hook. We can make it much larger now. And we can fold it up like this as well. It might create a little sharp edge there though, but if we're careful, we can kind of do things like that. So we can control where this effect is taking place and we can do it a couple times over maybe. And we can get some really cool results out of it, right? Like it's something very easy to do. You can also try other things like the grab tool. You try just using grab and pulling it around. That's something you could do. It's better for tweaking and adjusting things, I would say. But you have like snake hook elastic as well. Elastic snake hook. Um, this one right now you don't see much of an effect from it because of the mask, but it makes everything behave like rubber. So if you're doing certain types of leaves, this might be really useful, right? So you can do things like that. Now, what else do we got to go through here? There's tons of stuff we can do. Like the pose tool, I gotta reset it real quick. I got all modified, but the pose tool is like most of you guys know it as this. Like it does okay stuff, but you can actually tweak it to use IK limit or IK segments. And you can create as many IK segments as you want. It just gets less and less performant when you do. But you can do a lot of IK segments. You can do big pulls around like this. And you see it gets kind of crazy though. But you can do that if you wanted to. That's some kind of idea there that maybe you want to do something like that. See, you can actually tweak it a little bit more by changing the iterations here. Smooth them. You can turn that up quite a bit actually, and it'll just keep it from being so sharp when we do the bend. But the segments are still there. Like they're not going anywhere. So I don't even know how many segments it'll actually let you use, but probably a lot, right? And I haven't really tried that before. So that'll be a little bit smoother perhaps, right? You can use a pose tool as well. It's kind of fun, right? Or that. You do all that nonsense there. I guess you could pull it back through itself if you wanted to. See what you can get out of that maybe. Yeah, it's just a lot of stuff to experiment with. Neat, right? All right, so here's the deal. What else can we do? Well, we already went over the masking idea, but we can do something a little bit different with that perhaps. We can mask and invert. We have the boundary tool, right? And we can push this down. It's a little weird on this in this manner, but like it can fold it underneath basically. very easily. So you can get really sharp folds as well. You can press A, use smooth, turn off auto iteration, crank it up, so you can make it do a little bit smoother in that area. Yeah. So you can fold things in that manner as well if you needed to. Pretty neat, right? Like it all works. It's just like there's tons of things to experiment with and try different ideas out anyways. So now the twist tool. Twist tool is kind of interesting. It works on the normal. And when we click, you don't see what's really going on here, but that little dot, that little yellow dot in the middle, you do like if we move out away from it, like we click and move out, we do little circles around it. Okay. It should have a little icon for this, in my opinion, but we can do it clockwise or counterclockwise. And it works off the normal. So the way the circles land onto the surface here, that's the normal direction, basically. Okay. So we can spin things. Not real aggressive right now, apparently. But we can change the way this behaves a little bit because we're sculpting on that normal, which is the area plane. And we can change it to, they say, do the world Z axis, for example. So that's up and down on Z. So we can do that. It works usually better in an angle for some reason. Don't ask me why, usually. But you can spin it around on Z, doing something like this. Okay. You can do the other axes as well, X, Y as well. So it'll always work that way, no matter how you look at it. Right. But you can change it to use the view. So the view is not this circle down like this. The view is this. That's the way it's going to do it. So no matter how you're looking at it, it's always using that circle. Okay. It just doesn't update the icon for it, unfortunately, which I think it should personally. So yeah, you can do the view and spin things around like this. So you might get in here and try that in this area. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you can do that there. Okay. Maybe you want to mask a little bit and mask a little bit. Okay. Move it out. And now we want to do that. Invert it. So we can start up here maybe and do that. You can see that creates like a little weird twist or fold there. Maybe you need that. Maybe that's something you can play around with and start to figure out and, work with it. You do that and then try boundary after. See, experiment, combo tools together. Don't be afraid of using these tools together. See what you can do with them. Try not to fold them over on each other though, too much. And so, yeah, you could do something like that. Pretty interesting. And this is where I think multi-res is kind of crazy too, because we did a lot of sculpting on this, right? I don't want to destroy that setup right now, but I'm going to duplicate it out. But you could go into edit mode. You can still twist this around manually as well, or move it around. You can create variations on the same thing basically if you needed to. We don't have much geo there to work with, so it's not that impressive. It's just kind of boring and even. You can move it around, and it doesn't really lose the sculpt necessarily, which I think is rather interesting. Kind of do that, and occasionally it will. Eventually, if you go too far with it, it'll do something crazy like that, possibly. So that is a possibility. That's why I made a duplicate. You can experiment with that idea. Now, this is where it gets even more interesting, right? We have all these other tools that are cloth tools. We can still use these. Every one of these is still very useful. You have a pose tool, more or less, if you want to think of it like that, but it's going to destroy a lot of stuff, but it's going to create like that cloth effect on everything. You can experiment with all these as well, like grab tools and whatnot. Yeah, like a little squish tool, which might be actually kind of interesting on some parts of this. No, it does a little physics simulation, so of course it creates the noise. Now, at grab random, do little numbers like that. And the idea here is that if you need it, you can use it. Like if I just want to inflate a little bit, it can add some interesting distortions if you do it very lightly. You can always smooth out the noises that it creates and everything it's doing. Like this here, I don't really like what it's doing. Maybe I just snake hook grab it, pull it in, smooth it out or something, right? Maybe I can fold it up in there a little bit better. Or we can use like the push cloth tool. And we can do that. Push cloth's rather interesting because, or all the cloth tools for that matter, they have collision. If you didn't know that, you don't know how collision works in Blender, let's just create a cube real quick for demo. And this cube, I'm going to sit down here. For the cloth tools, usually you use, let's go to it. You just add collision. That's it, right? Like it's nothing too crazy. If you start inside the other mesh, though, you're gonna have a little bit of a problem with that. Let me kind of line this up like right here for just a second. And so if we use push and we have cloth on, or we're using the cloth push, we have collision on, we can push this right down to that surface. You can actually use objects to help you sculpt, which is rather interesting as well. If you ever run into situations where you need like a little flat surface somewhere, maybe do that, or maybe a certain specific like rounded shape. You can definitely push things around and do this, and then smooth out that weird detail a little bit. Yeah. So you gotta kind of take your time with this to get the hang of it, start to fully grasp it. But it is a thing, right? And it works out pretty well. You can always try using regular cloth simulation on a model as well. There's like nothing stop you from doing that. Um, Regular sculpt tools also work very well. Grab cloth is really good. You see, we can just pull things in basically very quick, right? And so we don't have to be kind of like intimidated by this idea that we're doing something hard, like working with geometry that's really complicated. It's really once you get used to modeling and you can handle doing a little bit of subdivision modeling, and you start playing around with some of the sculpt tools, you'll realize this all is all way easier than you probably realize. Like this little point is driving me crazy. I'm gonna kind of sandwich it in here. Try not to touch that back face over there. I'm gonna try smoothing it out a little. That's a pole basically, so we just got to get rid of it. And now we can just use like our regular sculpt tools on top of this as well. So we can keep adding detail. Or we can crease things. Like maybe this area is not quite what we want. We'll set this one positive as well. We can just kind of crease up this edge a little bit. Maybe do that, smooth it down a little bit sharper. Push these in. We can do all kinds of fun stuff with this, guys. It's not just leaves. Like you can do like shrink wrapping kind of with a mix of modeling, shrink wrap, modifier, and then using the push cloth tool. You can do really cool plastic wraps on products and things like that. And take your time. Just have fun with it. Do clothing this way as well. It's all on that one very simple geo right now. So you're probably thinking like, how do you add the thickness to it and everything? Well, you just solidify it. You probably do it on the high poly model, which is what this is. Not try to do it on a low poly one necessarily. You might even retopo for a low poly. But the low poly retopo goes a lot faster than doing a more detailed model anyways. So snake hook and pull this in a little. You can shift and shape things all day as well, right? Don't accidentally grab the back faces there. You could turn on front faces only. Won't work back there now. And that will work out well. Might want to adjust some of this still. So we can push it around, do whatever we got to do here. You can't end up with overlaps, so be careful. Don't do that. Don't need to. Surprisingly, you can actually overlap with subdivision mesh to create certain kinds of effects. This is not one of them. So it'd be like curtains, top of a curtain maybe. But little weird things like that. Little odd things. So yeah, we can basically start creating the patterns of the leaves that you want to create, and before you know it, you got your whole setup here. Kind of little setups going. They're very subtle. There's very subtle little things that happen on leaves. And I'm not going to say I'm any good at it, but it's something you got to practice with quite a bit to master, I think. Trim tool here will basically scrape on a normal. You can flatten certain sections as well if you want to do that. Just like we use this thing for all kinds of stuff, wood and rock. You still use it on leaves as well. Flatten out a little. So it's not completely curvy everywhere. It's a little bit of more interest. You can see doing that kind of thing, like we might smooth out some of the borders a bit. So it's not all perfectly sharp either. See what I'm going up for there? And that's going to build up the interest rather rapidly and very fast anyways. And so that's how you can end up with leaf shapes and designs and whatever else. You know, shade it smooth. There you go. Add some texture to it at some point, and you can do that very easy off of this very basic shape. Give her that cube. So when you're sculpting, you know, have fun. Don't be afraid of using all the tools. Like there'll be times you might not use like some more than others, but um, there's like really cool things you can do in sculpting that you just don't see in a lot of tutorials. You don't realize that you can make very basic geos like this and work them into all kinds of crazy shapes. That's all part of like the sculpting workflow, if you would. But the thing here is like we get this shape going. This is usually a lot of times for games, anyways. You bake these into trim or bake them into Atlas textures and reconstruct your plants as 2D planes. So you can do that, but things might be changing in the future where you're using nanite, and nanite has like the voxel setup that lets you do leaves. But you can see here, I solidify it. You have two options. You either send it outwards or you send it inwards. One's going to work better than the other. Try both, I guess. But you can see it does sometimes solidify rather oddly. And so turn that off a sec. And that happens to just be that pole area. Sometimes you have to go in, smooth things out, or move them around, try to work out this pole area so that's a little bit nicer, maybe. Maybe use proportional edit as well. Some leaf designs, you have like certain specific shapes you need. So you might be able to do like linear or, I don't know, sharper or something. And create those little effects as well. So that you can do, yeah, something like that. They have little spikes on it or whatever. I don't even know what you'd call that on a leaf. Little serrations, if you would, or something like that. You can change the sizes of the proportional edit. So you can always do that. You do it with the sculpt tools as well. It's not really anything super special here. And when you solidify, try to do it somewhat thin. You can apply this. I'm going to show you a little trick here. Get rid of that material for a second. Okay, and this is an edge loop when you do the solidify. So you can alt click on an edge, and you can go into sculpt mode, add a face set from edit mode selection, and then you can go to face set, initialize face sets by face set boundaries. So you get internal face set, outer face set. Great. You need this if you're going to do any more sculpting. Okay. So like if I wanted to add a little thickness to this, maybe it's not a completely dead leaf and there's a little thickness I want to add to it or something, right? So I want to inflate it or something. I want to sometimes limit things by face set. So that's auto masking by face set. In this top section, I'll work only on this now. It won't influence the inside necessarily, except the inflate here doesn't actually work out too well in this case. Maybe we just try like a sculpt draw or something. We don't try to inflate it right away. Strength up apparently. So you can see we can pull that up a little bit higher so it'll have depth to it. So that's nice. And we can work that on the bottom as well or other little sections and what. Something you could do potentially. Add face sets and auto mask it. The boundary edge as well that we had just created. It is just one little set of quads like this. Like, you might want that. It doesn't look too bad, especially if you subdivide it once. It looks okay. But if you ever need another kind of arrangement here, you could do a loop cut around that and then press Alt S, turn off proportional edit, Alt S it. You can pull it out to a little bit of a sharper point, perhaps. So that's a fun little trick as well. So now when it subdivides, it'll be a little thinner perhaps. So this would be a great way to get started on a high poly leaf that you can, bake down if you needed to. And so you don't have to start with sculpts like this, where they're all solid and probably much more difficult to deal with. You can do just like a base sculpt that's very flat, maybe something like that, and just add the detail into it if you need to. And then with a little bit of practice, I'm pretty sure you can get big deformations going. When you're in sculpt mode and you have a subdivision, turn use deform only on. It will turn the subdivision off while you're sculpting, but you can do that, and you could probably try to get away with doing some big deformations now using like the pose tool and other things like that. So you see if I limit by face set, it's only going to do the one face set. But if I do all of it, we can start to bend it around. Now, the only problem with this is that we can easily end up with the mesh crossing itself over, right? So this, I don't know if I would recommend actually trying to attempt to do this too much, because it seems like it would work good, but it really doesn't do all that great. But you could try doing, yeah, you could try doing that, but I don't know if it would ultimately work out. There's, thin mesh gets a little finicky in 3D. One of those kinds of things. But if you could pull it off, then that's awesome. Snake hook as well. Snake hook is, oh, snake hook has front face only on. Yeah, see, you can still do some things somewhat easily. It gets a lot more finicky though. If you ever end up doing that, like even inflate might not save you, because a lot of guys try to use inflate to get away from the problems of holding it over. And you can see like inflate will just sometimes create worse issues. But a lot of times it can help. So do, if you run into that issue a little bit, try inflate, see what happens. Not too bad. Just shift click in here to do a little bit of smoothing. You don't got to do much anymore. There's a little overlap here. You could do the grab tool. Turn it on for front faces only. You could probably just grab this by face set. So auto mask face set. Probably pull it apart a little bit. Getting really thin though, isn't it? All right. Well, you can end up with variations if you really wanted to. That's what I'm trying to point out. Probably better to do it on just the plain one before you get to this step. And you will probably have to do a pass. Well, you don't have to, but you probably will want to do a pass of detailing on the bottom here, because if you model one for like a trim, like if you're doing an atlas texture and you're baking it, like you got one like this, you might as well use the other side as a new leaf, basically. So you can flip it over, do that, and then detail on the other side as well. And you can create like little clusters of leaves and all kinds of other fun stuff. So you'll have to overlap them appropriately and try to make them all fit together. You can also physics in these things as well. So if you want to add physics to them, like rigid bodies and all that, drop them on the floor, create little clusters and decals, or what, you can do all kinds of fun stuff. You can bake these out. Yeah, you can bake them out to a plane and have a bunch of material stuff going on there, like the roughness and whatever else. If you add materials to it, you can actually take it into Substance Designer, or maybe just bake a height or a normal. Take it to Substance Designer as like just one image, and you can do the splattering of them in Substance Designer. That's kind of a fun thing you can do as well. To model them and then use them as a tool for something else. Have fun with it. Right? Lots of stuff to do. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this one, and I hope you enjoy it. I'll check you out in the next one.